The Steam Deck makes for a wonderful on-the-go PC handheld gaming experience, but obviously, it's also really nice to be able to dock it every now and then and actually hook up to a big screen TV or a smaller monitor in a desk setup, and there are quite a few options now available on the market to do that. Before going over all these different dock options though, I do want to go over some general practices of using the Steam Deck in docked mode, because there's some aspects of it where to really get the best out of it, it's not necessarily as user-friendly as I would think. It's not necessarily hard to do, you just have to go out of your way to do a couple things real quick, and one of the big parts of this is the resolution of the image. The Steam Deck in handheld mode prioritizes what on a larger screen would be considered a fairly low resolution. It's 800p in handheld because it's 16:10, and when you're putting that on a more traditional 16:9 TV, it's going to be trying to do 720p. Now, because the Steam Deck is designed to target these resolutions, you have to work around a little bit in order to actually make it display higher. Basically, on a game-by-game basis, you need to go into their individual settings and tell it to, instead of relying on a default resolution, go for the native resolution of the display that you're plugged into, or just manually pick whatever specific resolution you want. Now, there is, of course, a reason why the Steam Deck is designed to target these lower resolutions, because for a lot of more demanding games, the Steam Deck isn't really designed to handle those at high res. There are some titles where you can absolutely blow the resolution up and it's going to be fine. For instance, Hollow Knight. On the other hand though, if you're playing anything that is a more intensive looking game, you might be able to squeeze up to 1080p just fine, but going up to 1440 or all the way to 4K is probably not going to result in the happiest looking frame rate. However, the Steam Deck does offer a solution for these situations as well, which is FSR. This is AMD's AI upscaling technique that basically takes a lower internally rendered resolution, in this case 720p, and then applies upscaling techniques to it in order to make it look more like a higher resolution image while costing not nearly as much performance. The final result is something that doesn't look quite as good as something really rendering out at that high of a res, but it's going to get a whole lot closer and end up looking much better in a docked situation while not harming the frame rate in a way that's going to make games, well, not playable. So with that out of the way, let's talk about some dock options, and to begin with, we should probably just start with the official option, right? The official Steam Deck dock is the one that is from, of course, Valve, the company that makes the Steam Deck. There's a bit of that warm and fuzzy feeling that comes from buying the one that's actually made by the same company that creates the product. You generally have less of a fear of any kind of future compatibility issues as things are updated across both systems. However, also being the official first-party option, it is quite a bit more expensive than a lot of other options out there. While there are lots of third-party options running a variety of price points, which we'll talk about in a little bit, going as low as 20 or 30 bucks, the official dock goes for a whopping 80 bucks. What this 80 bucks is going to get you is basically a simple cradle design that the Steam Deck can sit in. There's a attached hardwired cable that you'll plug into the top of the Steam Deck's USB-C port in order to connect to the dock, and the back of the dock features a number of ports to work with. A single USB-C port that is sadly not meant to be used with accessories, it is specifically for plugging in for the wall power, and then a set of 3 USB-A ports, which you can use for any accessories you want to use with the setup. On top of that, you're going to get Ethernet, HDMI, and DisplayPort, offering 2 different options for plugging in displays. If your main goal is just to use this with a TV, HDMI is all you're really going to need. However, if you do like the idea of using it with a desktop setup, there are going to be times where having DisplayPort is going to be an advantage over HDMI. You'll also get an additional official charger for the Steam Deck, which is nice. There's a part of me that kind of wishes they offered a cheaper option where you just didn't get an extra one, since one does come with the system itself. But there is a convenience to having access to 2 official chargers, obviously one that can just stick with the dock at all times, and the other one you can keep in a bag or just somewhere on hand so you can do on-the-go charging. Truth be told, from a functional standpoint, as far as what you're getting for your dollar over other options out there, the official one doesn't really do that many things that other ones can't. Still, there's a certain warm and safe feeling that comes from using the officially supplied option, and while this one is going to set you back, it is ultimately really easy to use, comes with everything you need, and is a very simple solution for a dock setup. Now again, there are a lot of cheaper options out there that offer functionally a very similar thing, but before I talk about those, I want to talk about some slightly more interesting options you can use that work a little different from other ones out there, beginning with one from today's sponsor that offers one of the most unique ways to play, Vitcher. Instead of relying on a traditional display, Vitcher's XR glasses give a unique and honestly really cool way of playing games. It's also really easy to set up. For instance, with the Steam Deck, all you have to do is plug the glasses into the USB-C port at the top, put them on, and bam, you've got gameplay playing right inside the lenses. Because the lenses are so close to your eyes, this actually simulates the experience of playing on a 120-inch screen that you are completely isolated and focused on because, well, you're wearing the display right on your head. And sounds great too, thanks to speakers that were developed in collaboration with Harman. The setting makes for a really amazing on-the-go experience because you're getting the portability of using the Steam Deck on the go, but instead of relying on just the small built-in screen, you're getting this experience that's much more akin to using a large screen display. The glasses are lightweight and comfortable, allowing for some extensive gameplay sessions, and they also have adjustable distances so that if you are particularly near or farsighted, you can balance it out at the right distance so that the image looks clean and crisp to you. Speaking of which, the image quality of the XR glasses is wonderful. Not only is the image nice and clear, but the color vibrancy really makes sure that you're completely immersed in what you're playing. Now, the glasses alone make for a really cool experience, but one other thing that you can get from Vitcher that goes along with it is their mobile dock, which serves two really important purposes. One, with the Steam Deck, it basically acts as an external battery so that when attached to the system and plugging the glasses into it, you're actually getting over 3 times the regular battery life of the Steam Deck, allowing for way more gaming time on the go without needing to charge. And if you have a Nintendo Switch, you can actually use the mobile dock with that and 2 pairs of glasses to allow for a on-the-go split-screen player approach. So if you want to do some local multiplayer on something like, say, Mario Kart, you're able to have 2 people side by side, each wearing their own pairs of glasses, seeing the gameplay. It's kind of hard to fully convey what it's like to use these glasses because all I can really show you guys is me wearing them while playing games. And to be honest, I was definitely a little skeptical up front when I was first trying them out, but actually after having put a bunch of time into using it both with the Steam Deck and the Switch, it makes for a really immersive experience that you can't really get relying on a traditional display. If you want to learn more about these XR glasses, I do have a link posted down below in the description, so make sure to click that and check it out. And thanks again to Vitcher for sponsoring this portion of today's video. Another interesting one to look at are the Genki covert docks. There's actually 2 of these, the original covert dock and the covert dock mini. The original covert dock was designed for the Switch specifically in mind, whereas the mini was updated and changed a little bit to work better with the Steam Deck. However, they both actually have their own specific additional benefits when used with the Steam Deck specifically. Now, the main point of the covert docks is that they are very small. They are not only the dock solution, but also just the wall plug-in itself. So there are some limitations to how this can be used depending on where a wall socket is relative to the display you want to use. The idea though is that you just plug one of these into the wall socket and that provides the basically minimum number of ports needed to make this setup work. You'll have a USB-C port that goes to the Steam Deck and acts as how you actually get the signal out, and an HDMI out that will go to whatever display you're using. If you get the regular full-size covert dock, you'll also get a single USB-A port that you could use for a controller, keyboard, mouse, whatever thing you can use just a single slot for. Meanwhile, the Mini drops that option entirely, so you're going to have to rely on just using the Steam Deck itself, which is actually one of the kind of interesting aspects of using this in a docked setup. Really, the way it ends up working out, especially if you're using the Mini option, is that instead of relying on the Steam Deck just sitting on a dock somewhere, not being directly interacted with, and relying on a controller or a keyboard and mouse setup, using a long enough USB-C cable, you can actually set it up so that you're holding the Steam Deck and still using it as your main controller interface while seeing the screen displayed on whatever monitor or TV you're using. If you really like using the Steam Deck controls, in particular having access to the touchpads as well, this is a really interesting way of being able to do that while simultaneously having a docked setup, which is kind of cool. Now, if you don't like the idea of using the Steam Deck that way and you want to use a more traditional controller option, you do still have the ability to make use of a Bluetooth controller for either of these setups. So for instance, you could just have the Steam Deck sitting off to the side, plugged into this little wall outlet charger, and then just use an Xbox controller or whatever Bluetooth PC controller you have on hand and connect it that way. One thing worth noting about the Mini is that while it does lose the USB-A port, meaning that it does lose out on some additional accessory functionalities, because it was released after the Steam Deck came out and was a thing we knew about, it has one very important update that the regular adapter does not have, which is 4K support. Price-wise, both of these are cheaper than the official Steam Deck option. However, they still end up costing about as much or even a little more than some of the cheaper third-party options. The Mini runs for $50, while the regular covert dock runs for $75. An important thing to note here is that the really big benefit you're getting is that portability, because it is a small enough dock that you could fit in a pocket. But compared to using the official dock, or these are the third-party ones, you're losing out on a lot of port options. You don't have access to USB ports, you can't connect to internet, HDMI is your only option. It's just a much more limited use case. Something that I think is really cool for a portable on-the-go dock solution, but not necessarily something that's going to be a great fit as your only dock. Next, let's talk about cheaper third-party options that are functionally pretty much the same as getting the official Steam Deck dock. In particular, the main one that I messed around with and worked with is the JSaw dock. This is the first one that I really heard about. I think it actually released before the official option did, so that was their easy break into the market. And they've released more versions of it over time. I grabbed the latest one in red. There's a couple different versions of it, however. I got the one that is not the most expensive, but just shy of that, so that it's really some noticeable savings compared to the Steam Deck dock. It was 45 bucks, so it was basically half as much, with only a couple compromises. First off, this particular model did not come with a charging cable, so you do have to either use the official Steam one that you have, or if you've got some other charging brick on hand that can do the job, that's an option as well. And while it maintains having an Ethernet port and the same number of USB-A ports, it only offers an HDMI out option and not DisplayPort. Now again, I think HDMI is really enough for most people, especially if you're planning on using this with TVs. If, however, you're interested in using it with a desktop monitor, you might want to double check what the port options on there are, because if you need to use DisplayPort to really get the best out of it, you're going to want to make sure that's an option on your dock. Now, the reason I really went for this one is because, again, I think it was kind of an important midpoint where you're still saving a lot of money, but also still getting a lot of options. The same company actually makes a lot of different ones that offer escalating or decreasing prices with more or less functions. For instance, there's an even cheaper option where you only get 2 USB ports if you don't see yourself making use of all 3, or there's an even more expensive option for 60 bucks where you're still saving money relative to the official dock, not as much, it's 20 bucks off, but that does offer the DisplayPort option that the model I have does not. And honestly, just functionality-wise, in terms of actually using it with the system, as of right now at least, it's the same. I have swapped between these two different docks, and as far as the image clarity that comes out, the colors, everything, it is the same experience. Again, if peace of mind is something that's really important to you and you just want to make sure you have an official first-party option, totally respect that for doing with the Steam Deck dock. I'm actually very much that same way. But if you just want to save some money and all you care about is something that for sure right now works, at least the JSON one that I'm using absolutely gets the job done, offering the same or very close to the same functionality with more and more savings depending on how much you cut off. At the end of the day, all these options work. They will get you a display to a TV or to glasses directly on your head in the case of the XR glasses. It's really just a matter of how important first party is to you and what kind of additional functionalities or trade-offs are worth saving a little bit of extra. If you're interested in grabbing any of this stuff, I have a link down below in the description. As always, if you enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button to let me know, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you guys later.